The conservative movement can be traced back to the 1930s as a reaction to FDR's social programs, the New Deal being one of those. It did not begin to pick up traction until the 1960s. However, this history is not entirely accurate. Thomas Jefferson and the Anti Federalists were for small government in the 1700s. The conservative movement is really just an expansion of the Anti Federalist Party. What I will seek to do in this video is to set up a framework for understanding the modern conservative movement. It is in no way intended to be comprehensive. Instead, the goal is to build off this video in the future to break down the conservative movement within the Republican Party. As I build this picture of the conservative movement, follow me along, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. You don't want to miss videos. Fair warning, it's probably going to take me quite a bit of time to get all this stuff. There's a lot of material to cover. There are more than a few key figures to rise out of the conservative movement. However, William Buckley and Barry Goldwater could be considered the founding fathers of the modern conservative movement. Ronald Reagan, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robinson, they're the face of the conservative movement. Before we get to William Buckley, I do want to draw a timeline of the 1960s. This was a period of great unrest, and the many struggles of this particular decade really provided nutrition to not only the new Democratic Party, but the new Republican Party as well. In 1960, JFK was elected the youngest president in American history. The next year, we had the Bay of Pigs and the construction of the Berlin Wall began. A year later, the Cuban Missile Crisis happens, and the University of Mississippi's first registered black student. In 1963, JFK is assassinated. Then in 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident happens, and Barry Goldwater is defeated by Lyndon Johnson. 1965, Watts race riots in Los Angeles occur. 1966, troops in Vietnam increased to 250,000. In 1967, we had the Detroit race riots. And then in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. You had riots at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. We finished the decade with Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. William Buckley Jr. was born in New York City, November 24th, 1925. He was a prolific writer. It is said he wrote over 4.5 million words. In 1955, he founded the National Review. This would become the bedrock of conservatism in America and would help him put out his vision for the American government. In the National Review, he made two arguments I just want to highlight here. One of those is about government. He said it is the job of centralized government in peacetime to protect its citizens' lives, liberty, and property. All other activities of government tend to diminish freedom and hamper progress. Second point he made in the National Review is that the competitive price system is indispensable to liberty and material progress. It is threatened not only by the growth of big brother government, but by the pressure of monopolies, including union monopolies. The 2 points he's making here is for small government and no regulation or low regulation. The argument is the backbone of conservatism. Less government, less regulation, let the people decide what needs to happen economically and within their lives, as long as they're able to take care of that for themselves. If they aren't, then that becomes the government's job. That is a key part of conservatism you need to understand and take with yourself as we try to understand its influence and impact on the nation. Buckley needed some powerful name, though, to get these ideas out. And to do that, he used Barry Goldwater. Born January 2nd, 1909 in Phoenix, Arizona, Goldwater served 5 terms as a senator for Arizona. He is most famous for losing his 1964 bid for president of the United States. It was an absolute slaughter. Most importantly for the conservative movement was a book called The Conscience of a Conservative. It was published under Goldwater's name in 1960, however, it was ghostwritten by Buckley's brother in law. The book was a wild success. It sold 500,000 copies by November of 1960. So you have a book that's published in the beginning of 1960, and just before the year ends, it sells 500,000 copies. The Conscience of a Conservative makes pretty much the same arguments that Buckley was making in the National Review about small government, low regulation, low taxes. They belabor the point in the book that the federal government has grown too big, too incompetent to adequately handle the needs of the people. They really want to, Goldwater, Buckley, they really want to pare down the size of the federal government and put the direction of the people into the hands of the people at the local level. Goldwater was too abrasive and too conservative to sell the vision he had for this new movement. It would actually take two preachers and a former actor to move forward Goldwater and Buckley's conservative vision. If you guess that actor was Ronald Reagan, you win something. Ronald Reagan really is just a figure piece for the conservative movement. His charisma and theater helped him win 2 terms, but it's the men he elevated to positions of power that implemented key U.S. policy that changed the face of the federal government. James Baker, Edward Rollins are 2 of those men. We will talk about them down the road, not in this episode though. There are 3 policies that I've identified as the key to Reagan's presidency that really fit with this conservative vision Buckley and Goldwater had. One is supply side economics, which is the theory that lower taxes and decreased regulation, smaller government, increase economic growth. The other one was this war on drugs. Believe it or not, that's actually a Nixon platform, but Reagan co-opted it and used it as evidence that he was making people's lives safer. Sound like Buckley? There's a lot of controversy surrounding the war on drugs and mandated sentencing, especially the disproportionate effect on non-white Americans. So there's very succinct arguments to be made that Reagan actually didn't make people's lives safer. The other big policy or change that Reagan helped bring about that people credit him for is the fall of the Soviet Russia. He had a famous line, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. He kind of solidified that his style of tough, hard-nosed, don't bend on any point with Soviet Russia helped bring about the fall of communism. If you read any of the conservative movement pamphlets or works or the stuff coming out of the National Review, the big target is against communism. They want to end communism. They view it as a threat. Well, they get their moment with Ronald Reagan. However, Gorbachev really was more important to the fall of Soviet Russia than Ronald Reagan actually was, which I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of slack in the comments for. Reagan's policies were able to give the illusion of reduced government size, increased safety, and bringing about the fall of communism. But to sell this production, he needed evangelism. And so out of Southern Baptist America rose 2 preachers, Jerry Falwell Sr. and Pat Robertson. They were pivotal in organizing millions of Americans into a voting force. Jerry Falwell was a Baptist minister who started the Moral Majority, an organization he used to bring America back from what he called this moral abyss. He opposed abortion. He was anti-LGBTQ+. Falwell really was going after this Great Awakening type period in America where he could end all this moral decay that was occurring. Now, Pat Robertson, he was an influential televangelist for Ronald Reagan. He started the Christian Coalition, but it was really his Christian Broadcasting Network where he was able to reach millions of Americans in their homes to talk to them about putting church back into the American government. Imagine having two prominent ministers telling you that America was on the brink of judgment if they didn't vote for Ronald Reagan or other particular conservative politicians. It certainly changed your mind, or at the very least, make bells ring as far as the direction that America was headed and the future that your children would have. Let's wrap this up. William Buckley was able to further his political idea of conservatism using the name of a 5-term senator, Barry Goldwater. This inspired two Baptist preachers, Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, to help promote conservatism as the answer to overcoming the moral decay of America, and they propelled Ronald Reagan to 2 terms as America's president. Those 2 terms Ronald Reagan had made conservatism a major player in American politics. That's a very brief history. We covered only a couple key players. There's so much to get to when it comes to conservatism. I had to exclude key players like Newt Gingrich, Ed Rollins, Mitch McConnell, and many, many more that helped solidify the Republican Party's turn to conservatism. There is a lot to get to in future episodes, so please give this video a like below and give my channel a subscription so you don't miss any further episodes about conservatism in America. Appreciate you giving this a watch all the way through. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Until next time, have a good one.